Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if your natal Venus opposes Pluto. And this is kind of like this contact between Venus and Pluto is going to be like if you have Venus in Scorpio, for instance. So there's definitely an intensity as far as romantic relationships are concerned, in one way, shape, or form. Maybe you're not the one doing it, but the other person is, and you are attracted to that type of individual. I want to give a shout out to leahwhitehorse.com. This was the site that I read to kind of be able to summarize the ideas of it. I already have done the square and the conjunction between these two planets, and I think that contacts between Venus and Pluto are very important. If you have been having difficulty in personal relationships, especially romantic relationships, but not necessarily, I would say all one-on-one relationships of a fairly serious nature. But, Venus indicates our attitude towards love. So we do tend to associate it with that type of relationship that's more of a romantic relationship. And one thing that Leah Whitehorse, I'm assuming that's an actual person, said, or the site said, was, I'll just read it verbatim. Often the native tends to relate to one side or the other of the opposition. And, so we've got it's kind of like sugar and spice. We've got Venus is, the goddess of love and beauty. It's considered a benefic planet. It's, the ruler of Taurus and Libra, and the Empress card is associated within the tarot. It has a lot of positive attributes attached to it. Now think about Pluto, and that's a little bit different. And so the dark and the light. Now, who's the dark and who's the light? That's the question. This type of configuration or a natal aspect can lead to, if you're the one who is the Venus person, that you are attracted to dark figures. And we could look at different sun signs that might be more vulnerable to this, like Pisces, for instance, that have a tendency to get involved. And I should speak to the Venus sign as well, but somebody who has a sun in Pisces could easily have a Venus in Pisces. And even the moon sign can influence people's attitude when they're what their emotions represent to them. Because if you really are aware of things, if somebody is very controlling, there are certain like red flags that if you're emotionally perceptive, you're going to like run for the hills. But a lot of people will actually misinterpret those things as, oh, wow, he cares about me or she cares about me. She really, she's calling me 20 times a day. Wow, that's so thoughtful of her or whatever. And not see it as obsessive. And definitely Pluto can be the stalker, the obsessive person. Now, if you're a Scorpio person listening to this, or somebody, when I said stalker and then I immediately went to Scorpio person, that was intended, but it was also slightly facetious, okay? But the thing is that, Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, also by Mars, but, Pluto is really, we can see the Plutonian aspects in Scorpio people who are classic Scorpio types. And even if you go, oh, damn, I'm the stalker, and I'm not talking about it has to be like full blown stalking, but I'm just saying like that you tend to get obsessed in relationships and maybe you drive by their house afterwards and you can't let it go. You find it hard to let it go. Understand that there's a reason for that deep down inside. And I know that Scorpio people are people who have strong plutonic elements like planet, personal planets in the eighth house, the moon contacting Pluto, things like that. Sun in conjunction or, making contact with Pluto, that you guys um, understand and appreciate what it means to go beneath the surface and to root out well, I should say dig out the root cause so that you can really get to the bottom of things, because that's what Pluto specializes in. So the point I'm trying to make here is that, we use these terms like stalker, obsessed, and we never really say, okay, but why? Oh, that so-called stalker lost their mother when they were 3 years old. Oh, okay. Or they saw their father, get murdered when they were 10. These kinds of things happen because people fear abandonment. Our society needs a lot more understanding and a lot less demonizing of these kinds of things. However, if you're somebody who is the Venus person and you have attracted into your reality one or more obsessive relationships, then I'm not sugarcoating that. I think that that's very dangerous. So it's like playing with fire sometimes, this combination, because the person may attract a dangerous person into their life even more than once. And, if you've ever had a friend or have heard about maybe cases on the news that sometimes, unfortunately, that's why they're on the news, because they're tragic situations where the victim of the obsessed person was very kind and everything like that. Maybe a personal situation like that where you have a friend who is a sweet person and they're with somebody who's very abusive, and you're like, what does that person see in them? And really, that's another thing that we have to realize here, is that there's something, if you're attracted to something within that dynamic, then there's something within yourself, your shadow self, that wants to be purged. And some of this can be rage, believe it or not. If you're with a very angry person, you could have that deeply buried rage, and you're vicariously living through that person who's very rageful. I read that somewhere, and I don't know if it was related to astrology or what, but I immediately resonated with it, because I think that that's one of the best explanations I can think of for why somebody would do that, and because a lot of times you will have come from a place of experiences of trauma, and when somebody is being abused by somebody, let's say it's a parent, and they're like stuck with them, under the same roof, it can be very dangerous to express anger towards that parent. You might not be able to say anything, talk back to them at all, or you risk, abuse. So that doesn't mean that there isn't anger there somewhere for that type of terrible treatment. So these kinds of things can also come up in the area of money. And this can happen when there's an understanding that money in this world can confer power, because Pluto can be about power and Venus can be about money. So let's set aside all of that other stuff that I just mentioned about trauma, abuse, and let's just talk specifically about money. Because maybe you don't resonate with what I say about the abuse side of things, or about the, being attracted to people who are controlling, or that you're controlling in that sense, in terms of like just um, possessiveness or whatever you would associate with the emotional side of it. But the money side can be used for control too. And when Venus or love gets put into the mix, it can be very distorted. And it can create a lot of problems because the person doesn't know whether they're, imagining things, they're overreacting to certain um, ideas that they have, reactions that they have towards what they're experiencing in a relationship. In other words, if you're involved with somebody who has money, and they, at the beginning, they may have just flaunted it, bought you all kinds of gifts and things like that. And then when they got you, all of a sudden, it was like it seemed like they were pulling back, and they were using the money as a way to get you to do certain things. It can be insidious, where it just kind of creeps in very gradually and you don't realize it. Or just by, virtue of our materialistic society, it can, and especially with some circles that people run in where there are a lot of materialistic people, it's just like, par for the course that this is how life works, that there's a very materialistic framework for the person's lifestyle. So everything is a commodity, everything becomes about money, including um, relationships and sex. Oh, yes, we have to bring up sex, because sex can be a part of this as well, with the Venus opposite Pluto aspect. Sex is a commodity when we talk about sex workers, right? A prostitute has a certain, set charge for each sex act. And it's very straightforward. There's an honesty in it, to be truthful about it, But it's a little bit hazy when you're in a so-called romantic relationship. I say so-called because there might actually be more of a tit for tat type of setup. And the people may not admit it to themselves, but that's exactly what it's about. An example would be, and I'm going to say that the man has the money because that has been traditionally the case, but it might be just the opposite, especially these days. But the man might be older and more established, and he has the bling, he has the deep pockets, and the woman will tend to be younger. She'll tend to be hot, and she's his arm candy. Now, but even I don't want to really talk about that situation, because that's more blatant. Because it's like if there's a big age difference, I mean, it's obvious that there could be something more going on. But let's say even if it's somebody within your age range, and they just happen to have a lot of money, they make a nice living, they have a rich family, whatever, and they're able to invite you on all these fabulous trips or events, and yet there is an expectation on your part that you're going to put out, that you're going to, do what they want you to do. And depending on how much money means to you, you may go along with the program. I joke about marriage. How many marriages is like legalized prostitution. Now, I don't want to be that crude about it, but I'm saying, I really do think that happens, where the one person thinks like they've been ripped off because they're not getting X amount of sex per week. And that was the agreement. I mean, that's what, that's why I agreed to get married, because I was going to have guaranteed sex for the rest of my life. And I won't have to go out and try to convince somebody to go to bed with me. I'll have it built in right here. That is seeing that other person as one's property. Now, again, I'm speaking to you as if you're the Venus person. You might be the Pluto person very easily. And so all the things I'm saying, think about your attitudes. Do you shower people? Do you shower your romantic partner or potential partner with material objects, hoping for some kind of commitment or loyalty, that they won't abandon you? And how does that feel to do that? Does that feel authentic, or does it feel like fear-based? So suffice it to say, this combination can lead to power struggles, because Pluto is about power, and the relationships, Venus represents those relationships, and they're opposing one another. So it's like being at opposite ends, and almost like adversaries, in a sense, adversarial relationships. In business, as this site mentions, this could work to your advantage, but she cautions about, overdoing that. I personally feel that there is no place for this type of behavior in any type of relationship, because even if it's toned down, it still is a manipulation. Whether it is with the Venus trying to maybe even like cajole somebody into giving them, charm somebody into, investing in your business. Well, I suppose, you have to have a little bit of charm to be a good salesperson or whatever, to make a business deal. So I won't say 100%, but I think it's so easy to get into the manipulation. Pluto is like, I think both of these planets can manipulate. But Pluto is really a great study of human nature, and so that's the secret weapon that can make it very easy for such an individual to manipulate their way through life, through relationships. And even if you quote unquote win, it's like the Five of Swords. It's an empty victory. It's not necessarily going to lead you to where you want to be. So what can you do about this if you have this opposition? And okay, if you're somebody who tends to attract intense partners, or you're just attracted to that type of person, the first thing you can do, if obviously I'm assuming that you're dating, you're not committed to anybody, is you might want to try to date outside of your type. Date somebody who doesn't look like the person you typically are attracted to, who doesn't act like the person you're typically attracted to, maybe doesn't have the same type of profession, because some people may be attracted to certain people of certain professions knowing that they make a lot of money. They know exactly, they don't have to even ask that person, how much money do you make, because they know that it's going to be higher than average. But what about if you did go out with somebody who doesn't have this glamorous job, who doesn't make very much money, and see how you relate to that person? You might find that you really get to connect with somebody. It's not just this manipulation, because that's the worst thing about this, is that the person wants a deep, deep connection more than anything. but it's kind of like being your own worst enemy in trying to obtain it, because you are going to typically be attracted to somebody who is not um, good for you in that way. And by the way, that applies to people who are the Pluto type of people, who are more controlling in relationships. You may specifically like very weak, passive people that you can push around. But that isn't really going to make you feel good, because there is power in this combination. So to harness that power, even though it's in a adverse aspect, you can still extract the essence of this contact in a positive way if you choose to do that alchemy. And it's funny because, Pluto ruling that eighth house, that is about personal alchemy and magic in general. And that's all about learning how to um, see the good in a situation and then build upon it rather than crash and burn. Crashing and burning is usually happening because the person is not living intentionally. They're kind of just living on their emotions in the moment, and they're not really tuning into life at a deeper level. If you're a person that tends to be that controlling person, well, first of all, ask yourself, what are you afraid of? What are you trying so very hard to control? Are you afraid of being abandoned? Do you have a background in some kind of trauma connected to abandonment? And how can you um, show up in relationships at a deeper level? Well, not just at a deeper level, because I think you are going to be deep, but in a more vulnerable way where you stop being secretive so that you can be that um, controlling person that is invulnerable to the other person, that the other person sees as invulnerable, and it makes you feel powerful. And actually do the exact opposite and lay your cards on the table and let the other person know that you are hurting, that you're afraid to get close. And, obviously, we can't do this with everybody. We have to be uh, discerning about who we open our hearts to, because not all people are going to be worthy of that deeper connection. And I don't mean that they're not worthy as human beings, but not in that context. Some people will take that information and use it against you because they're, uh, they don't have a sense of their own power. So they're trying to, do that through somebody else themselves. So these kinds of things are very deeply entrenched in people, and that makes it very hard for people to um, identify it and also to believe that they can change it, but you can do it. It takes a lot of self inquiry to understand exactly where it's coming from and the ability, the desire to change. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a personal reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.